Welcome to the Jazz Flyte Podcast. I'm your host, Darrell Scott, and together we will dive into the lives and careers of the jazz legends who have left a rhythmic imprint on the world. Be prepared to reminisce on the highs and the lows of their musical journey and the trials that sculpted their timeless musical gems. We'll preserve the legacy of these extraordinary maestros and find inspiration in the melodies of their lives. Subscribe now and never miss a beat. Now, let's get to the show. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Jazz Flyte Podcast. I am Darrell Scott. Our guest today, I'm going through my research and everything, and I didn't realize everything that you have done. I mean, I have a bunch of CDs, albums, we'll just call them projects, but I didn't realize TV shows, movies, films, and everything you've done. And we'll throw in the fact that you teach. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Dan Siegel. That's my right. Over my right shoulder, I've got a couple of his pieces of work up there, and I'm going to lobby because it really is. Soaring is one of my greatest music. I think it's one of the best songs ever made. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Dan Siegel. Dan, how are you today?
I'm great. Thank you, Darrell.
Not a problem. So let's talk about your beginnings. How did you get started in this wonderful world of music?
Oh, well, um, I started taking piano lessons when I was 8, and it was really my mom. She was like, "You're taking piano lessons." My dad was totally not supportive. So I took piano lessons for about 3 years, and I had a fabulous teacher, and that's like one of the things will make a huge difference in anybody that's interested in trying to get good in music. Is I was just talking about this last night in one of my classes, and a lot of the young people think like, "Oh, I can watch a few YouTube videos and I can learn how to do something." But when you're sitting with an instructor, they can look at the way your hand, like on a guitar, it's like, well, if you moved your left hand like an inch down, it'd be a lot easier to play faster. And be
Hmm.
like, you couldn't do that or get that kind of instruction from a video. Um, and so I had this fabulous teacher, and she was unusual in the sense that um, she taught harmony and theory in addition to just repertoire, like throwing up a piece of music and play it and learning how to play it. She said, "What's going on here at bar 8? What is happening, between the treble and the bass clef?" And then that kind of unclicked something in my head, and I became really interested in the complexities of harmony. Um, and she also had once a week, once every 2 weeks, I think it was, that we'd have these meetings between all of her students, and we'd sit there at her house with cake and cookies and Kool-Aid, and she would have a blackboard with the staves up there, and we'd talk about harmony. I mean, no teacher really does that. It was very unusual. There happened to be this like red-haired girl named Ann Fox that I remember. She went there as well. That was probably my prime motivation for going to to those events. But yeah, I got a really great background in harmony and theory, and I ended up I was teaching music at a music store when I was 14, just because I had that knowledge. So it really kind of got me off on good footing, good foundation.
So these hands can pass a basketball. I have no manual dexterity whatsoever. How at 8 years old do you get taught, number one, to do something different with each hand and to do something kind of different with every finger? I can't understand it. I'm the guy, literally, Rub your head, pat your stomach. I can do that. I can have my hands go in two different directions. I can do that. That's it. So where does this, how long does it take you to learn? And how long does it take you to learn that?
Yeah, I can't remember. And that concept of doing different things, with each hand is if you think about it too much, you go, wait, this is really difficult, right? Well,
Right?
I got to tell you my basketball story. When I was about 8 years old, I was on a basketball team, a lousy basketball player, and my friend was his dad was the coach, and I got one defensive rebound, and the world disappeared. I got this rebound, right?
Uh-huh.
The other nine players ran to the other side.
Yeah.
It took me three times, but I made a basket for the other team. My older brother, he literally beat me up after that, and reminded me that I was a lousy athlete and I would never be good at anything, which I almost believed him for a while.
Right.
Anyway, that's the basketball story, but I don't know. That's what's weird too is that I don't have the dexterity in my hands that I used to have. It's,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, getting older, it's like I've got arthritis in this hand. Sometimes I can't close it. I can today,
Mm-hmm.
but hey, part of the deal. You get beyond it. You just work through it, and then I find that it doesn't really affect me.
I
Um, so things change, right? I mean,
I was at a concert and was fortunate enough to go backstage, and the piano player, who right now will remain nameless, had somebody massaging his hands and his fingers and everything. And I'm thinking, I guess that makes sense because this is muscles, fingers that you're using. And if you're playing a concert on roughly, you're using these things for 90 minutes. And after a while, they get a little tired. They get a little, and if you have any kind of aches and pains, and you throw in the fact that you might be doing it when you're touring, 3 out of 5, 3 out of 7 nights a week, and then you go back into when you are creating your music, your album, and you're on the piano 4 or 5 hours at a time. I I can't work out 4 hours in a day. It's not gonna
right?
happen.
Yeah.
But that's a talent that you all have. Um, when you were younger, I read this that you had a number one album back in 1979. Um, how do you feel when that happens? I mean, you've done all this work, and all of a sudden, the masses really like what you've done, and now you can't go anywhere because now you got to sign autographs, you got to do this, you got to do that. How does that make you feel? Were you nervous? Were you worried? Is the pressure now, my next project's got to be just as good as this one? What's going on?
Well, I mean, that's kind of a good question. I can't remember thinking about it.
Hmm.
I can remember going, well, I guess the music doesn't suck as much as I thought it did because there are, some people that actually are listening to it and like it. Um, I never thought, yeah, I mean, my heroes were people that, have been around, were older than me, that I had a lot of respect for. And I never thought that I ever came close to their abilities. So, yeah, I don't really, I don't think it really, I thought about it much. I think I thought about it a lot more when an album came out and it was a dud,
Hmm.
and it didn't get played or, it didn't sell. And you're kind of like reminded, it's like that, whatever that was, didn't work, I mean, that stuck with me more than, hey, look at that, it's number one. I mean, I will say that the very first time, I think it was the second record, but the very first time that you hear a song, your own song on the radio, you're driving down the road and you hear it on
Hmm.
the radio. That was like, I almost had to pull over. I was like, praise God. That was
Yeah.
like, that was, that was a pretty thrilling moment. And then, of course, over the years, it kind of, it doesn't have the impact, I guess, that it used to.
And it's not that you expect everything we we all don't have a Thriller album. It's a Wonderful Thing. It's got, I don't know, 9 songs on it, and 8 of them went number one. But what makes you persevere? What makes you keep going?
Well, I'll tell you when I finished this last record, we finished the horn overdubs. It was the last actual recording session before we mixed. And I was leaving Sunset Sound. I'm out here in LA, and and I stopped for a second, and this thought just like hit me. And I looked around and I thought, what if that's the last one? What if that's the end?
Hmm.
And it kind of was like sad, and shocking, but um, you just the way it works for me, and I think it's different. We were talking about like Tom Brown and how you're saying like where do you get the ideas and all that. Um, I wait until the inspiration hits. When I finished this record a couple months ago, I haven't touched a piano. I didn't go near a piano for about 2 months.
Hmm.
I had no interest. And usually what happens, it takes me a year or two before I even feel like I got any ideas.
Hmm.
But when they come from somewhere else. I don't know
Hmm.
where they come from, but you get something and you sit down and you start working it out. And it's like, okay, that's half a song or something. It just happens.
Hmm.
So when the inspiration comes, you don't take it for granted. If you said go in the studio tomorrow and make a record, I couldn't do it because I have nothing. I have no interest, no ideas. I wouldn't know what I would do. So yeah, just it is, I don't know, some kind of magic that's lives up there.
Do you find that creating the work that you do is, I don't want to call it inspirational, but like you said, it takes a while to produce it, and you have many different flavors. And throughout your career, somewhere in my office, I have the Birds of a Feather CD, and it's a different vibe than kind of everything else you've done. But you've done a couple of other things that have been different. I mean, if there are, we'll call them silos, you got 5 or 6 silos, and they're all different. Was that on purpose, or was it just the fact, and I don't mean this derogatorily, that you got bored with this silo, so I just want to try this, and then I'm going to try this. What was the process behind that?
Well, the birds project is like that's funny that you mention that because the guys keep saying, Smitty, the bass player, um, I'd say once every 6 months, he'll text me or send me an email saying, we got to do another Birds record. I'm like, let's do it. And then, of course, everybody gets, he's
Right.
on the road, everybody's busy. But that was intended to be like a group record, and everybody contributed songs. So it
Mm-hmm.
has a completely different vibe. And there were actually three different versions of that band. And the last one that we did, the Stand Together record, was probably my favorite because it finally like came together and it felt like a band. Um, and then the couple of the other ideas were meant to be different. It's like
Mm-hmm.
when I started out, oh boy, there was um, we were talking about earlier about how I had a band when I was 12, and one of the bass player in that band, a guy named Patrick O'Hearn, who he lives in Nashville now, still into music. And when I moved down to LA in the end of '83, he was living down here.
Mm-hmm.
And I called him up, hadn't seen him since, our band broke up when we were like 13 or something. And we went out, had too many drinks, and, we ended up going back to his apartment. And he had all these electronics keyboards sitting
Mm-hmm.
around. He had worked with Zappa. He was really into Brian Eno and all that kind of out there stuff. And I said, you know what, let's make a jazz record, a jazz trio record. That was what we were going to do. And then after all those margaritas that we drank, and then we're sitting around at his apartment. We started twiddling with all the electronics devices that he had.
Hmm.
And I said, you know what? Let's make an electronics record. And that's what we did. That was another time, another place. And and I was fascinated by all those sounds. But I mean, it's obviously a completely different concept.
Right.
And I still am interested. I've got like tons of different instruments laying around, and when you hear them, they kind of inspires you to write, but in a different way.
Hmm.
It's a different concept altogether. Um, Again, it's just if you feel it, go with it until you don't feel anything anymore.
No, you had a lot of feelings. Let me just say that because there's a lot of good work, and then you throw in Patrick O'Hearn. Now, once again, somewhere in here, I got a CD by him, and I'm old, so I can't think of the song right now because I'm old. Um, but it's not just your music. You've done some other things, some TV stuff, some film stuff. How do you go, okay, on Monday I'm doing contemporary jazz. On Tuesday I'm gonna do the birds of a feather thing. This Wednesday is TV and I got a film score to work on. And the other 3 days I'm gonna kind of take off. How do you manage your time when you have various projects to work on?
It, I mean, they can conflict
Hmm.
sometimes, and when that happens, I mean, it can get a little hairy. It's just your time assessment. And it's like, how do you gotta, with the thing about working in TV and films is like that's pretty much has to be your focus because they're on such tight deadlines,
Right,
especially TV. I mean, it's like a weekly schedule that if you're doing episodic TV, um, it's like you usually will get the rough cut Monday or something. That means you have from Monday to like Thursday to write recording session on Friday, and then they'll typically shoot the new episode on Saturday and Sunday, or they've shot it or they edit it and get it together. You get a new one on Monday, and so it's just constant. And you can't like, I think I need an extra day. There is no extra day. You're
right,
fired. And so, I mean that can get kind of crazy. Um, and music. Every time I've done like a film or TV show, I'll go, God, I miss just making records. I like the people better, and right, and then it's just like the deadlines. It's a little more open. You're not stuck to this strict schedule. But there is something sort of kind of appealing and interesting to working in TV and film because it's such a huge collaboration.
right,
So many people involved. And that is to say that that not every experience is hugely positive. I mean, the first film that I worked on, or it's a second film that I was actually the composer on, I almost got fired because I'm telling the director, I'm saying this scene is. I remember saying this is comedy, and he goes, "No, I want to play it like horror." And I said, and I was like, I told him, I said, no, I said, you're like missing the movie. And he
hmm,
goes, I'm the one that made the movie. And then
right,
he called my manager and said, get this guy off of this project. So my manager had to say, like, I'll get him to shut up, right? So he calls me and like, dude, you gotta just it's his movie.
right,
It was like, oh, yeah, right. And now I learned that one, but
yeah.
it's a completely different hierarchy and set of personalities that you're dealing with.
Yeah. Let's gonna take not a break. We're gonna take some time and listen to This Time Around by Dan Siegel on the Jazz Flight Podcast. this time around by our guest today on the Jazz Flyte Podcast, Dan Siegel. Dan, you mentioned, I just wonder now that you've kind of specked it out for us and the whole TV thing, is the movie thing different because you might not see the scene to make the song fit the scene? I mean, I think in TV, at least you can go back and maybe look at the previous episode or something. But in movies and films, no, this is the feeling we want to have. This is what we want to do. How do you deal with that? And if all of this falls in a month, I imagine there's margaritas at the end of the month.
Definitely margaritas. For sure.
So how do you manage all of that? How do you deal with all of it? That's a lot of stress.
There's a lot of stories about composers that are working in TV and film, either dying, having nervous breakdowns, getting divorced. I took a couple classes at UCLA, and the guy that taught it was called Scoring to Picture. It was like how to deal with TV.
Hmm.
And he said, when I'm working on a series, he goes, I send my family away because I become a real jerk. They don't
Hmm.
want to be around me. I don't want to be around them. And
Hmm.
it's a lot of pressure. Um, and I think the most interesting thing about working in anything to do with video is that, and most people don't see this, so they don't really have an idea or an understanding. But the next time you're looking at a TV show, turn off the sound. And that's what the composer gets. He just gets like, he'll get the dialogue if there is dialogue, but then
Hmm.
where there isn't dialogue and you can kind of play it dramatically, it's like, it's just blank, it's empty. And how do you interpret that?
Right.
Well, you can interpret it energetic, soft, sad, you know. In that class that I was just talking about, the scoring to picture class, um, there was a guy, I'll never forget this. He was a guy from Finland, and we were practice scoring this. That was a TV movie, and we all got a chance to score this one scene. And the movie was, I can't remember what the name of the movie was, but it was about his father and a young boy. His mother dies of cancer. And so it's, the relationship between the father and the son.
Hmm.
They were never close. The kid was close to his mom. She's not there anymore, and the two of them can't communicate. And after the funeral, they somehow bond. And at the end of the movie, they're like hugging, and it's
Hmm.
kind of melodramatic. And, we all had a chance to write it. And it's kind of like, well, okay, this is like the most uplifting part of the whole movie. It's pretty
Right.
sad and dark the whole time. And that's the one opportunity we had to like score it happy. And this guy from Finland, it was like a funeral march. He was like, dun, 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 dun. Father and son are hugging and
Right.
crying together, and he's playing this funeral march. And I remember at the end of it, we're all going, wow, that's weird. And the teacher said something like, you see how this can be interpreted in multiple ways. And the guy's name was Evo. And he says, Evo, that was very interesting. He didn't say like Evo, that's not going to fly.
Right.
Why he chose to play it like that, that was how he interpreted the scene.
Hmm.
Probably in the professional world, he would have just been fired. And it was
Hmm.
like, you're the wrong dude.
Right.
Um, but I mean, that's the excitement of it because, you gotta interpret and you gotta remember that it's up to the director. It's his film
Right.
or film, and you have
Hmm.
to. You're just adding to it. You don't want to detract. You want to take it somewhere where it's not supposed to go.
Right. If it were a recipe, you don't want too much salt, too much pepper.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. You go from this stuff and then you get into TVs and movies. Why and how do you get to that? I mean, what if you got, I want to do this, how do you audition? Because you obviously got to have TV or film things to score. If you don't have that, then showing my age, what is your audition tape?
Well, that's a real catch-22 in this business because when you're just starting out and you want to get into that line of work, the first thing you're going to hit is like, what have you done?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, I haven't done anything, but I've done a lot of practice stuff, or I understand the media or whatever. Um, Everyone can say, go get some credits, come back and talk to me then. And so, how do you get those credits in order to get the experience to like interest people to want to hire you? So
Right.
it's like a catch-22. You how are you going to do it? You have to kind of do it on your own. Um, the couple of openings that came my way in TV and film fell out of the sky. I just got a call. Somebody said, "We heard like one of those records. We want you to, are you interested in coming and doing a show?" I'm like, okay. It's just a call. You pick up the
Mm-hmm.
phone and somebody, now of course it happens with emails and it's a little
Mm-hmm.
different, but um, some of the coolest things that have happened to me just happened out of the blue. That's one of the things that I tell my students. I said, be prepared, study, understand the different mediums that you might want to work in because one day you're gonna get an opportunity that you didn't expect.
Mm-hmm.
And how you take advantage of it, you be prepared,
Right.
study, you know.
As we go forward, once again, let's take a listen to Next to You by our guest today on the Jazz Flight Podcast, Mr. Dan Siegel.
I would bring you a field of flowers, that's your lucky star or two. With my heart, I would paint you a rainbow if I could get next to you. There's so much we can share. Held me off for too long. We both know that there's so much here. This is where I belong.
Welcome back to the Jazz Flight Podcast. The name of that last track we heard is called Next to You. It's by our guest today, Dan Siegel. Dan, you mentioned that you are a teacher and you teach. Where do you teach and what exactly do you teach? If I was going to come out there and take your class, what would I be taking?
I'll give you special privileges if you do. We'll start with you'll do no worse than a B. How about
Okay.
that? So I teach at a school called Miracosta College. It's in northern San Diego County. And I kind of teach just about everything, but I teach music production. I teach music business, music and media business, contracts, the performing rights, intellectual property, copyrights, that kind of stuff. I just led the big band last semester, which was interesting,
Hmm.
20 screaming brass players. It's like, can you guys turn it down? And
Okay.
then, some music history classes. I mean, kind of all over the place in the music technology, music production area, and as music performance as well. So
Hmm.
it's kind of cool. I kind of have experience in all of those areas,
Right.
so I'm able to kind of branch out.
Do your students listen to your work and comment on your projects?
Um, I try to keep it a secret. Some of these young guys, they don't know who I am, and that's okay. Occasionally, I mean, it's kids are like they Google stuff, so they invariably they'll find out and they'll say,
Hmm.
"Man, you've been around for a long time. You're really old." I'm like, "Yeah."
Don't you love that line? Oh my
You
goodness
know,
gracious.
they typically are a little more sensitive than that, but um, I'd like to think that all that experience makes me a better teacher and that I can actually relate some of the theoretical stuff to the practical, you
Hmm.
know. You think you want to go out and be a rock star, and go out and tour. I said, it's really hard. I mean, you can do it when you're young. It gets,
Hmm.
gets more difficult later. Everybody, I'd say 50% of my students are hip hop producers, and
Hmm.
their instrument is their laptop. That's all they have. And I try to like say, great, what if you wanted to record an acoustic instrument? You
Right.
got to put up a microphone, right? It's not going to come out of your computer, it's not digital. And so try to like expand their musical horizons a little bit. One of the, it's pretty funny because it's like, I said, you want to be a good producer? You want to be a better producer? Listen to music that you don't like.
Hmm.
Don't listen to music that you like. Listen to stuff that you have no affinity for, and maybe that you just hate. And of course, what's the most despised genre of music? Country.
Really?
Yeah, it's over. I say, okay, you guys, you hate country music. I can't tell you. I've been asking that question. What's your least favorite genre? Everybody's like, country, country. Okay, fine. Listen to country music. Why does it work for, I don't know, whatever percentage of people out there?
Right.
It's the stories, right?
Hmm.
That's what connects with people. Maybe that, I don't know. You'd think that cowboy hats would kind of like go out of style or something, but
Never. They never will.
apparently not. But yeah, that's how you kind of like listen to music that you don't like and see what you can get out of it. There's got to be something there. It has an audience.
Hmm.
So what is it that is attracting people? And it's different things for different people. Um, it's a kind of a philosophical perspective. Think about it. You might learn one thing that you can apply to your next production.
Hmm.
Maybe not. Maybe you'll just say, reaffirm that you hate country music. But you might learn one little thing. Maybe the way the guitar is doubled. Maybe, it's a completely different genre, a different approach musically, but for most of them. But that's the kind of discussions that we will have, trying to just get people to be more open about things. Because, we all get, I'm only going to listen to this genre. And the kids are kind of, even though, as you know, it's like everything's hyphenated today,
Yes.
so it's like the genre I like is, it's got multiple hyphens in there to like, okay, I don't know what that is. It sounds
Right.
like, encompasses a lot of different things.
I always go, you talk, I call them flavors. I look at jazz and I go from the early Miles Davis and Coltrane and those guys to the Charlie Christians and those folks, and you go to Benson and don't get me wrong, Tom Brown, because Funkin' for Jamaica just somehow does not fit in the world of jazz, but it's a great tune and everybody knows it. Um, the acoustic stuff, I got a CD here. It's called Acid Jazz, which is totally different. Um, who did I talk to? One of their influences is Jimi Hendrix. How can you have Jimi Hendrix as an influence on the guitar? And he goes, he gives me a name of a song that he's done, and you go, yeah, okay, I guess I hear it. So when you say that, just listen to something different, I think when in the world of jazz, eh, there's so many different things and so many different pieces and flavors and everything. And you go, I'm having a tough time listening to this stuff. I still go that one Miles Davis album, Bitches Brew. Um, I think there's five guys playing five different songs on that one song. But you mention it, and everybody knows it's Miles Davis, and everybody has an opinion
Yeah.
about it. But it's like, seriously, how can you do this, Dan? As we get ready to wrap up here, what are you doing now that our fans can look forward to hearing, seeing, whatever?
Um, I got a couple gigs out here on the West Coast. Um, and it's about in the near future that and the new semester just started like my first class was yesterday. So I'm kind of committed there for a couple months. Um, And I'm just kind of, and the record just came out like a week and a half ago or something.
Hmm.
So I'm kind of waiting to see what'll develop. Kind of, came out late in the year for like to pick up all the festivals and stuff because they've already been booked. So, I'm hoping to get out there a little bit more, and
Hmm.
I just I don't get out as much as I used to. And I think it's just the guys that I work with, like to have a certain, um, lifestyle. And
Hmm.
I agree with him. We got to eat good. We got to sleep good. We got to
Right.
travel good. And, so it kind of raises the cost of, of transportation and all of
Hmm.
that. But, I mean, when you're young, you can go out in a little, all sleep together in a bus or something. But when you get older, it's like, that's not gonna fly. So
What
I'm hoping to get out there.
what's the new record? Tell us about it.
Um, well, the new record is Unity. It's called, and just came out, I guess, about a week and a half ago. And in some ways, originally it was, you go through, you write the songs, and you kind of stand back and go, "What are these?" Originally, I was going to call it Reunion because it really is a reunion of people that I haven't seen for quite a while and
Hmm.
worked with. And I was listening to, one of the old records I did was, I think you just played a track from it, and Inside Out record. And I was listening to that and I went, man, the drums are great. I got to call Oscar Seaton again. I hadn't
Hmm.
talked to Oscar for a long time. I called Oscar, and he recommended a bass player that he's working with Terrence Blanchard.
Hmm.
And I looked him up online, some YouTube video, and I said, man, this guy's great. Okay, that's it. That's the rhythm section. And so it kind of started, grassroots. We cut tracks in, last October, November, and started there with Oscar and DJ. And then I went and started looking at all the guitar players that I've worked with, and I hired different guitar players that I'd worked with through the years to play on whatever tune I thought they would be appropriate for.
Hmm.
And that's kind of how I built the band. And I mean, I'm really that part of it. I did good because I hired a lot of really. I mean, these are all guys that are just fabulous players, and
Hmm.
um, it's kind of reassuring, when you can call somebody and they show up and they play and they still play well and add some. They bring something to the party, as
Right.
George Duke would say. You
Yes.
know, he used to say. Um, that's what you want. You want somebody to come in and give you something,
Right.
and all these guys did.
Now, are you of that new age where everybody can record the rhythm tracks can be recorded in Cleveland and you recording your tracks in LA as opposed to let's everybody fly in, here's your hotel, let's spend 19 hours in the studio and come up with something. You're doing the new way where you can just you have your studio at home and blah blah blah.
Well, that's the miracles of modern technology, right? I mean, tracks we all did together. Oscar and DJ, we recorded them in LA, and
Hmm.
we got together. You got to record tracks. You got to be right next to the guy. But most of the guitar players, they did it exactly like you're saying.
Hmm.
Like you send them a rough cut of the mix, and they play along with it and give you a couple tracks back. I mean, Rob Bacon was in. He's in North Carolina. I think I'm not exactly sure what town he's in. Um, God, who else? Dean Parks. He was,
Hmm.
60 miles north of me.
Hmm.
I didn't get to hang with him. We talked a lot, but, and then he just sends me the parts. I give him the direction. Same thing with Michael Thompson. Thompson, he's up in L.A. Alan Hines, he's an old friend of mine. I went over there and we played, and he played together. Mike Miller, also another guy up in L.A. But that I went to his house and we sat together. But a lot of guys just Lenny Castro, he's got a studio
Hmm.
he's up in Ventura. That's about, I don't know, 120 miles from me. Um, and send him the tracks. He uploads them and you dump them back down in your track.
Do you, when you're recording, do you miss the personal contact, the personal interaction when you can just like look to your, almost did that, when you look to your right and you can see the guy playing, or you look to your left and you see that? Or is it, I can sit here in the comforts of my home, and I can just mix these together and I don't have to worry about personalities or attitude. I just want these guys to play.
Well, everybody has a different approach about that, but my feeling is playing, and I think Miles Davis said that, because playing music is the most fun you can have with your clothes on. And it's true.
Hmm.
I like to like play and look over and be able to touch the guy and go,
Right.
man, you know, tracks have to be cut. Basic tracks, drums, bass, pianos have to be cut live, in my opinion. A lot of people
Hmm.
don't do it that way. I like to do it that way. Overdubs for guitars, oftentimes it works better when they can take the tracks home
Hmm.
and just do their thing.
Right.
And then they give you like 10 tracks that you have to choose from. It's like,
Hmm.
like, do I need all this? Probably not.
Hmm.
So it's kind of different, but for different parts of the ensemble. But yeah, there's nothing like, that's one of the things that I tell the kids and my students, because they're not big on collaboration. It's like, well, I'll play the piano and I don't play the guitar, and and it's like, get somebody that plays the guitar to play the
Right.
guitar, because they're going to be better at it than you are. And they're going to give you something that you're not going to get if you do it. And I'd say there's nothing, the music will only get better, not get worse.
Hmm.
And, I think a lot of young people are kind of, there's the technology allows you to do anything all by
Right.
yourself,
Hmm.
but that doesn't mean it's the best way to do it. And, for me, collaboration has always been an important thing.
Hmm.
I love hanging with musicians, and I
Hmm.
love being in the studio. So that's the
But
payback.
the conversations are great. The stories are great. When you hang with musicians, you can get away with asking certain questions, and it doesn't bother anybody because they understand. Dan, one last question. We got a bunch of people out there that listen, and we got a bunch of people out there that want to follow you. How can we find you on social media, and do you have a social media presence?
Well, admittedly, I'm probably not the greatest, but I do have an Instagram account that I visit once every 6 months.
Okay.
No, I got a Facebook account, and my website is probably the best because I have all the contacts that kind of spread out from there.
Hmm.
It's just Dan Siegel Music. Send me an email if you want to tell me you hate a song, or if you like a song, or or whatever. I like I love getting the communication from various people. Usually it's positive, actually no negative yet.
Hmm.
Um, that girl I met in Cleveland. I don't know, but um,
All right. Yeah, we can't tell stories of
yes.
I remember that Cleveland show very well. All right, sir. Thank you very much. I greatly appreciate it. We will, whatever you put out new, we'll post it and put it on our social media so that you can get the exposure from this podcast and everything else. We'll stay in touch. I reserve the right to be able to call you again in, I don't know, 6 months, 9 months. If you got something new, if you got something you want to announce, let us know. We'll give you a call and hook up with you. And
Okay,
if you do, you don't have to remake Soaring, just put it on a new project, and I'd be really happy with that.
that's not a bad idea,
Well, hey,
actually.
I part of this show is giving up idea. There's Daryl ideas, and if there's a tour with Marcus Miller, Nathan East, and Stanley Clark, it's my idea. If there's a coffee table book of different places that you guys tour, that's Daryl's idea. I've told two people, and each one of them has gone. I go,
I'm writing this down to remind myself.
all you have to do is take the pictures. You can give the pictures to somebody else, and they can create the book. Um, I interviewed Nathan East and his son Noah, and I brought that up about uh, bass players. And Nathan Noah turned to his dad and goes, "Dad, that's a really good idea. We got to do that." Okay. I don't want any credit. I mean, I have a buddy that did an album 112 years ago, and it says, "Thanks, Darrell." I'm good with that. I'm good with that. So once again,
Okay.
thank you very much. I greatly appreciate the time. And like I said, we'll be in touch and we'll follow you on social media.
Thank you, Darrell. It's been a pleasure. If any of your suggestions turn into actual projects, I'll remember to give you credit.
Thank you. I appreciate that, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been listening to the Jazz Flyte Podcast. We will talk to you next week. Thank you for tuning in to the Jazz Flyte Podcast. I hope you enjoy these stories and soulful melodies that grew through the doors of time. If you want to stay connected with the latest updates and episodes, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell. Until next time, I'm Darrell Scott.